Good morning. I am Dr. Rajinder, Assistant Professor, Department of Laws, Punjab University, and I will be speaking on the module of Interstate Trade and Commerce in Advanced Constitutional Law. The objectives of the module is to understand the concept of freedom of interstate and intrastate trade and commerce. Freedom of trade and commerce has been the most vital component in the economic prosperity of the state. To ensure same and taking into consideration the federal form of the government, Section 297 of Government of India Act 1935 was enacted. In enacting Article 301 to 307, that is provisions relating to trade and commerce, Section 92 of Australian Constitution played an important role. The module further highlights that the principle of free movement laid down in Athbari case, the Apex Court also laid down the theory of compensatory and regulatory measures in automobile case. As far as trade is concerned, we can divide the trade into two parts, national and international. As we all know that WTO has played and still playing a crucial role in framing international trade strategies of different countries. As far as national trade is concerned, it can be further divided into intrastate trade commerce, that is where the commerce which is confined within the territory of the state. Secondly, interstate commerce is the trade and commerce which overflows the boundary of one state and extends to two or more states. The free flow of trade without geographical barriers is a sine qua non for economic prosperity, that is the must requirement for economic prosperity both nationally as well as internationally. The European Union has accordingly removed barriers among the countries. The Indian polity has a federal structure, but still an arrangement is necessary to ensure harmonization and facilitate interstate trade and commerce without hindrance. In order to appreciate all aspects of the question in the right perspective, it is necessary to have a look into the background of the provisions in Part 13. It is well known that before independence in 1947, nearly 1/3 of the territory of India consisted of numerous states governed by Indian princes. Many of these states claimed varying degrees of sovereign rights, subject to limitation imposed by the paramount power. These states, in exercise of their power, imposed taxes, erected tariff barriers, impeding the free flow of trade, commerce and intercourse between themselves and rest of the India. The Government of India Act 1919 introduced the system of diarchy, by which an initial step towards the federal system was taken in the form of division of powers between states and centre, following the federal pattern of the government. In the light of this, provincial governments were given the subjects which were less significant, that is local in nature. In 1927, though Simon Commission suggested federal form of government, but was never in favor of giving taxes, levying power to the state government. Finally, in 1933, a joint committee was appointed to examine the workable pattern for the new constitution, that is Government of India Act 1935, on the basis of which the Government of India Act 1935, which formally introduced the federal system, providing a separate list for federal, provincial and concurrent. Entry 27 of provincial list acknowledged the freedom of trade and commerce, which was regulated by the Governor General under his residuary powers. Section 297 of 1935 Act specifically imposed limitation on the powers of provinces, prohibiting them from imposing trade barriers on the entry and export of goods, and it further prohibited the levying of taxes on the goods manufactured and produced in the state and outside the state. Further, Section 297 of 1935 Act imposed limitation on the legislative as well as the executive power of the provincial government in two ways. Firstly, it prohibited the provinces from imposing trade barriers on the entry and export of goods, and secondly, it also prohibited them from levying taxes which discriminated between goods manufactured and produced in the province and good not so manufactured and produced. Though the purpose of Section 297 was to achieve a free flow of trade within the state, but its application was limited to British India provinces only. The princely states could and did levy export and import duties at their custom frontiers. Another weak point in this section was that Section 297 subclause 1 subclause A has no application to laws made under any entry in list 2 and list 3 other than entry 27 or entry 29 of list 2. For the first time in Bhola Prasad versus R, the validity of a provincial law prohibiting the possession, sale, import, export of intoxicating liquor was questioned in the court of law. The federal court held that it is not violative of Article 297 of Government of India Act 1935, as the power is exercised by the provincial government under entry 31 of the provincial list. Though Section 297 acknowledges the economic unity of provinces, but the matter again turned for further deliberations to the framers of the Constitution of Independent India. While enacting Article 301, the Constituent Assembly deliberately tried to adopt Section 92 of the Australian Constitution. Movement is an essential ingredient of trade and commerce, and there must be no fetter on it. Any taxation would be a fetter. Section 92 of the Australian Constitution ensures that the trade, commerce and interstate intercourse via internal carriage or ocean navigation shall be absolutely free except for imposition of uniform duties of custom. Section 92 of the Australian Constitution immunized interstate trade only, as the words used therein among the state as far as Article 301 is concerned, it uses the word throughout the territory of India. So, Article 301 has a wider application in this context. It covers both intrastate and interstate commerce and has a wider application. Section 92 of Australian Constitution makes trade absolutely free, whereas Section 301 omits the word absolutely. Even in Australia, the freedom is not absolute but regulated and relative in nature. Article 302 to 305 lays down exception to the freedom of trade and commerce enunciated under Article 301. In India, as an aftermath of these provisions, the interstate trade and commerce is an exclusive central matter and states have a power only on intrastate trade commerce. The freedom of trade and commerce was in the Constituent Assembly was a part of a fundamental rights. Later on, during deliberations, it was discussed that the fundamental rights was meant to take power away from the union and state legislature and not to confer upon them, while agreeing that the article was not strictly relevant to the chapter on fundamental rights. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar moved motion for deletion of these articles, which was adopted without opposition. It was also proposed that the insertion of a new part in the Constitution, that is Part 10A, exclusively devoted to trade, commerce and intercourse within the territory of India. The purpose was to assemble under the single part of all the provisions on interstate trade and commerce scattered in different parts of the draft constitution. The chapter was renumbered as 13 in the adopted constitution. While discussing the interrelationship between Article 19 subclause 1 subclause G and Article 301, I would like to highlight that Article 19(1) subclause G is a fundamental right, that is, a right to practice any profession and carry on any trade, occupation or business subject to reasonable restriction in public interest. Whereas Article 301 could be invoked only when an individual is prevented from sending his goods across the state from one point to another in the same state, whereas Article 19 subclause 1 subclause G can be invoked when the complaint is with regard to the right of an individual to carry on business unrelated to or irrespective the movement of goods. Article 19(1) secures the right at rest, while Article 301 secures right of trade in motion. Article 301 is a constitutional right. Contravening the same is ultra vires, but it is not a fundamental right, hence it is not enforceable under Article 32 of the Constitution. The position has been further clarified in the case of S. Ahmed versus State of Mysore, where a situation has been discussed and said that where the act is valid under Article 301 and invalid under Article 19 subclause 1 subclause G, this will attract remedy under Article 32 of the Constitution. On the other hand, when the act or provision are invalid under Article 301 to 304 but valid under Article 19(1) G, this will not attract the remedy under Article 32 of the Constitution. The constitutional provisions of 301 reads, subject to other provisions of this part, trade, commerce and intercourse throughout the territory of India shall be free. Three essentials has been laid down under the provision, which are: first, trade, commerce and intercourse; second, free; thirdly, throughout the territory of India. Explaining the words commerce under US Constitution in 1824, Justice Marshall in Gibbons versus Ogden, a commerce clause includes undoubtedly tariff, but it is something more and includes intercourse. The Constitution framers did not leave the idea of intercourse to be implied by the process of judicial interpretation. They expressly incorporated the same under Article 301. The word trade and commerce are broadly interpreted, but focusing on moment aspect. In this context, Athbari Tea Company versus State of Assam is the landmark case in which the Assam state enacted a law called Assam Taxation on Goods Carried by Roads or Inland Waterways Act 1954, in which tax was imposed on goods carried by roads or inland waterways in state of Assam. The appellant moved to the High Court praying for a writ of mandamus or any other writ restraining the respondents from taking any steps under the provisions of this act. The Supreme Court took the view that if the movement, transport or carrying of goods is allowed to be impeded, obstructed or hampered by taxation without satisfying the requirement of Part 13, the freedom of trade, on which so much emphasis is laid down by Article 301, would turn out to be illusory. While Article 301 provides that trade shall be free throughout the territory of India, primarily it is the movement part of the trade that it has in mind, and the movement or the transport part of the trade must be free, subject of course to the limitations and exceptions provided by the other articles in Part 13. The court failed to take into consideration the quantum of tax burden, which by no means was excessive, but the tax was levied on movement of goods from one place to another. It was held to be violative of Article 301. the view propounded in Atbari was bound to have a great adverse effect upon the financial autonomy of the states. Thus, freedom of trade and commerce and intercourse from laws became freedom of movement of trade, commerce from direct and immediate restrictions imposed by laws. In automobile transport versus state of Rajasthan, the state of Rajasthan levied a tax of rupees 60 on a private motor cars, that is rupees 12 per seat, and rupees 2000 on the goods vehicle per year with the load capacity of more than 5 tons through Rajasthan Motor Vehicle Taxation Act 1951. Section 4, subclause 1 of the same act provides that unless the owner paid the respective tax with the appropriate time mentioned in Schedule 5, no motor vehicle shall be used in public place and kept for use in Rajasthan. The validity of above referred tax was challenged in the case, and keeping in view that whether the tax was burden on trade or impairs freedom of trade and commerce as mentioned under Article 301. The Supreme Court observed that the tax imposed is not violating the right guaranteed under Article 301, as the tax is compensatory in nature. The apex court turned up with the liberalized theory of regulatory and compensatory tax. The court further observed that the toll tax for usage of bridges, traffic regulations, maintenance of roads from wear or tear, etc., are regulatory measures which facilitate trade rather than hampering the same. Therefore, if any tax facilitates trade and commerce within the state will not be amounting to restriction, but if the same impedes or encumbers the trade and commerce within the state, it will be amounting to restriction. The justification of compensatory tax was given by Justice Das in the words, "A compensatory tax is making a charge for the use of trading facilities such as roads, bridges, aerodromes, etc. The collection of a toll or a tax for the use of a road or for the use of a bridge or for the use of an aerodrome is no barrier or burden or deterrent to traders who in their absence may have to take a longer or less convenient or more expensive route. Such compensatory tax are no hindrance in anybody's freedom." The automobile case turned aside the emerging perspective of extensive observation, gaining recognition that trade and commerce concerned barely with the movement of goods, and determined the tax law dispute by laying down a middle path, that is, taxes which proportionately benefit trade does not require presidential consent, thereby not touching an area of state independence. In Bolani iron ores versus state of Orissa, in this pertinent case, the question before the court was to determine that whether dumpers, rockers and tractors are motor vehicles under the concerned state motor vehicle taxation acts and are accordingly taxable, thereas the vehicles are not anticipated or adopted for the use on public roads, and the same has not been used by the aggrieved on public roads or public place. The apex court observed that as far as dumpers and rockers are concerned, they are not taxable till they are used in the premise of the owners. The apex court further observed that the taxation power granted under entry 57 list 2 is compensatory in nature, and it cannot be used when there is no nexus with the vehicles which are not to be used on the roads. In another case of G.K. Krishnan versus State of Tamil Nadu, the validity of motor vehicle tax, which increased the rate from rupees 30 to 100 per seat per quarter, was questioned in the apex court. The question for determination was that a non-discriminatory tax which is imposed by the state can be challenged under Article 301 as a restriction on trade and commerce. The apex court liberalized the taxing power of state and held it fall within the purview of compensatory tax and hence valid. They took up into the purview the tax collection, that is over 16 crore rupees vis-a-vis the expenditure, that is 19.51 crores. In another case, International Tourist Corporation versus State of Haryana, the transporters challenged the validity of a tax imposed by the Haryana government on the transporters who were plying vehicles from Jammu and Kashmir to Delhi on the ground that the national responsibility for constructing and maintaining the national highways is upon the central government, not the state government. The Supreme Court rejected this contention and held that to determine the validity of a tax imposition, it is essential to take into consideration the existence of specific identifiable object behind the tax purposes. In Jindal Stainless Steel Limited versus State of Haryana, in the pertinent case, a group of appeal challenged the constitutional validity of Haryana Local Area Development Tax Act 2000 on two issues. Firstly, the above mentioned act is violative of Article 301 and is protected within the purview of 304, that the above mentioned act seeks to levy taxes on interstate sales which do not fall within the ambit of state legislature. The Honorable Supreme Court, in a 5-member bench in this case, laid down the principle to verify whether a particular tax enactment is valid on the ground of its being compensatory tax. The concept of a compensatory tax is not there in the Constitution, but is judicially evolved principle. Compensatory tax is a compulsory contribution levied broadly in proportion to the special benefits derived to defray the cost of regulation, levied broadly in proportion to the special benefits derived to defray the cost of regulation, or to meet the outlay incurred for some special advantage to trade, commerce and intercourse. If the provisions are ambiguous, even if the Act does not indicate facially the quantifiable benefit, the burden will be on the state as well as the service or a facility provider to show by placing the material before the court that the payment of compensatory tax is a reimbursement or recompense for a quantifiable measurable benefit provided to its payers. Further, the Honorable Supreme Court also decided the constitutional validity of various entry tax enactment which were subject to matter of pending appeals, SLPs, writ petition, which were disposed of in the light of Jindal Stainless Limited versus State of Haryana. It was concluded that the doctrine of direct and immediate effect of the impugned law on trade and commerce under Article 301 as propounded in Athbari Tea State Company and the working test enunciated in automobile transport case for deciding whether a tax is compensatory or not will continue to apply, and the test of some connection indicated in the judgment of Bhagat Ram and Bihar State Commerce is no longer a good law. The dictum of Bhagat Ram case was relied on by a bench of 2 judges in the case of Bihar Chamber of Commerce case, which was reiterated the position that some connection between the tax and the trading facilities extended to the dealers directly or indirectly is sufficient to characterize it as a compensatory tax. The court went further to hold that the state provides several facilities to the trade such as laying and maintenance of roads, waterways, markets, etc., and on this premise it was held that entry tax was compensatory in nature. The principle propounded in Bhagat Ram and Bihar Chamber case was not a good law. The preceding deformation connected when in state of Karnataka versus Hansa Corporation and Geo Miller case indicated the tax imposed is compensatory in nature when it compensates the state for loss of revenue. Thus, the test laid down initiated in the automobile case that the tax will be compensatory if it benefits trade proportionately was changed to a tax which does not benefit trade proportionately is still compensatory and supplementary. Coming to the exceptions to freedom of trade and commerce, no freedom is absolute in nature. The framers of Indian Constitution realized this thing, and Article 301, 302 to 305 specifically lays down the restrictions on trade and commerce. 302 empowers the Parliament to impose a law on restriction on the freedom of trade and commerce and intercourse between one state and another or within any territory of India in public interest. 303 is again an exception to 302 and 303 subclause 1, which prohibits the Parliament to give any preferential treatment to any state, and further it also authorizes the Parliament to make a law giving preference or making discrimination on the ground of scarcity of goods in any part of the territory of India. 304 is an enabling provision, does not impose any ban but lifts the ban which has been imposed under Article 301 and 303. 305 saves the law enacted before the commencement of the Constitution, and it also saves the law which are monopolistic in nature and providing the state or the corporation controlled by the state. Article 307 authorizes the Parliament to appoint by law any authority to carry out the purposes under this chapter. This idea was originated from Interstate Commerce Commission in United States in 1877, and similarly a commission was established in Australia in Interstate Commission Act 1912. Sakaria Commission in 1988 strongly recommended the setting up of an expert Committee. While concluding, I would like to highlight that the scheme of articles in Part 13 considered as a whole is a well balanced. It reconciles the imperative of economic unity of the nation with the interest of the state autonomy by carving out in clauses exceptions in clauses A and B of Article 304. Article 301 and 307 guarantees the trade, commerce and intercourse shall be free throughout the territory of India with common restraint on the exercise of legislative power, whether of the Union or of the state, to secure unhindered flow of trade and commerce from one part of the territory of India to another. The judiciary has played a crucial role in developing the principles from direct and immediate restrictions to regulatory and compensatory taxes. But this freedom has gone a long way through judicial interpretations. With so many judicial decisions regarding freedom of trade and commerce and intercourse, still there cannot be or there have not been evolved a single straitjacket formula to decide the nature of the tax, and the judicial decisions, because of lack of set criteria, has varied in this aspect. Trade, commerce and intercourse have the widest connotation and cover almost all the commercial activities. The freedom guaranteed is not only from the laws enacted in the exercise of the powers conferred by the related legislative entities, but also the tax laws. Further, it has to be concluded that only those taxes that directly hampers the trade or business will be void, otherwise not. Laws which are purely regulatory in nature and compensatory in nature are not violated of freedom so guaranteed. Thank you.